Urumi. The Urumi was developed in South India, where the martial art Kpinga has been practiced for over 2,000 years. Unlike the swords of Europe or the Middle East, the Urumi broke every convention of blade design. Instead of being rigid and straight, it was forged as a long, flexible steel ribbon, sharpened on both edges. Some were as long as 5 to 6 feet, and advanced warriors could even wield multiple ribbons from a single handle, creating a storm of whirling blades. In combat, the Urumi worked more like a whip than a sword. The fighter spun it in wide arcs around their body, forming a shifting circle of flashing steel. Anyone who stepped too close risked being slashed to ribbons in an instant. To face an Urumi meant confronting not just a weapon, but a moving wall of death. Yet its deadliness came at a cost. The very flexibility that made the Urumi dangerous also made it unpredictable. A single mistake could cause the blade to snap back into the wielder's body. For this reason, it was never a common battlefield weapon. Instead, it was reserved for only the most skilled masters of Kpinga, warriors who had trained for years before being trusted with it. The mystery is whether the Urumi was ever practical in large battles. There are no records of armies using it as a standard weapon. It may have been more symbolic, used to intimidate, to display skill, or for ceremonial purposes rather than regular combat. Today, the Urumi is still practiced in some schools of Kpinga in Kerala, but mainly for tradition and performance. Macuahuitl. The Macuahuitl was created by the Aztecs of Mesoamerica, a people who didn't have access to iron or steel, yet developed one of the most fearsome cutting weapons of the ancient world. Instead of forging a metal sword, they designed a wooden club lined with rows of obsidian blades. Obsidian, a volcanic glass, could be sharper than steel, capable of slicing with surgical precision. Spanish conquistadors who faced the Aztecs described the weapon with awe and fear. Bernal Díaz del Castillo, one of Hernán Cortés's companions, wrote that a Macuahuitl could decapitate a horse with a single strike. To Europeans used to steal swords and lances, this was both shocking and terrifying. It proved that the Aztecs had created a weapon equal to, if not deadlier than, those in the Old World. The Macuahuitl wasn't just about killing power, it was tied to Aztec culture and ritual. The Aztecs often sought to capture enemies alive for sacrifice, and the flat shape of the weapon made it easier to subdue an opponent without necessarily killing them instantly. In this sense, it was both a practical tool of war and a symbol of their religious system. The mystery comes from the fact that no original Macuahuitl survives today. The last known specimen, kept in the Royal Armoury of Madrid, was destroyed in a fire in the 19th century. What we know comes from drawings, descriptions, and modern reconstructions. Did it truly cut as cleanly as the Spanish claimed? Or were their reports exaggerated by fear and the chaos of battle? Without a surviving weapon, we may never know for certain. The Macuahuitl stands as one of the most enigmatic creations of the New World, a weapon that defied European expectations and left a legacy of awe and mystery. Kpinga. The Kpinga was developed by the Azande people of Central Africa, and it immediately stands out as one of the strangest throwing weapons in history. Instead of a simple spear or knife, the Kpinga was forged with multiple protruding blades, hooks, and points. Its bizarre shape allowed it to strike in unpredictable ways, slashing from several angles as it spun through the air. This wasn't just a battlefield weapon. Among the Azande, the Kpinga was a symbol of prestige. It was often given to warriors of high rank, and only those who had proven themselves in combat were permitted to carry one. To receive a Kpinga was not only to gain a weapon, but to be recognized as a warrior of status and honor. The mystery deepens because many surviving examples were collected by explorers and colonists, often displayed as exotic curiosities rather than serious weapons. Some researchers argue that the Kpinga was as much a cultural emblem as a tool of war, a weapon that projected fear and authority even before it was thrown. Shotel. The shotel is a weapon that could only have come from Ethiopia, a sword with a blade curved like a question mark. Unlike the straight swords of Europe or the scimitars of the Middle East, the shotel's extreme curve made it uniquely suited to one purpose: bypassing an enemy's shield. In a culture where shield walls were common, the shotel gave Ethiopian warriors a devastating advantage. With a hook-like motion, a fighter could reach around an enemy's defenses and strike vital areas. It could slash from angles that seemed impossible, leaving opponents exposed even when they thought they were protected. The weapon was famously used by the Ethiopian Shotel elite warriors who carried large shields in one hand and the shotel in the other. But the mystery of the shotel lies in its rarity. Outside of Ethiopia, almost no culture experimented with such extreme curves in sword design. Why did it not spread more widely if it was so effective? Some suggest that its unusual shape made it difficult to use against enemies without shields, limiting its practicality. Others believe it may have been too specialized, thriving only in Ethiopian military traditions. Greek fire. Greek fire was one of the most feared weapons of the medieval world. It was first developed in the Byzantine Empire during the 7th century and used primarily in naval battles. Unlike ordinary fire, this strange substance burned even on water and clung to ships and soldiers alike. Enemies who saw it erupting from Byzantine warships often fled in panic, knowing there was no easy way to put it out. The formula for Greek fire was a closely guarded state secret. Only a handful of imperial engineers knew how to make it, and they passed the knowledge directly to their successors. When Constantinople fell centuries later, the recipe was lost forever. To this day, historians and chemists can only speculate about what it contained. Some suggest it was a mixture of petroleum, pine resin, and quicklime. Others argue it may have used saltpeter or even unknown chemical processes that are still a mystery. Greek fire was delivered through siphons mounted on ships or sometimes through handheld tubes. In battle, it looked like a medieval flamethrower spraying liquid fire across enemy vessels. Contemporary accounts describe ships bursting into flames instantly and sailors leaping overboard in desperation only to find the fire still clinging to their bodies on the surface of the sea. The mystery of Greek fire is not only in its composition but also in its effectiveness. Was it truly as unstoppable as chroniclers described, or were they exaggerating its terror to glorify Byzantine power? Without the original formula, we may never know. What is certain is that Greek fire helped the Byzantines hold their empire together for centuries against Arab and later Viking invasions. It remains one of history's most haunting lost weapons, a fire that burned on water and left only questions in its smoke. Hua. The hua was a weapon forged in ancient China that defies easy classification. Shaped like a giant metal claw, it resembled the paw of a bear or tiger and was designed not to cut but to tear. Warriors could use it to hook enemies off horseback, pull away shields, or rip through armor and flesh in brutal fashion. Unlike swords or spears, the hua was never a common soldier's weapon. It appears mostly in records of elite warriors or ceremonial contexts. This makes its exact role in Chinese warfare uncertain. Was it practical on the battlefield, or was it more of a prestige weapon intended to frighten enemies with its savage appearance? The mystery lies in how little evidence survives. Only a handful of descriptions and a few preserved examples exist. Some historians believe the hua may have been used more in duels or as a weapon of intimidation rather than in large-scale combat. Its strange design suggests it was difficult to carry and perhaps not suited for long campaigns. Still, the very idea of a claw made of steel fascinated later generations. It symbolized the raw animal power of war, a way of turning human fighters into something more beast-like. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.